Mr. B's Art Room.
What up, our peeps? It's Mr. B coming live from his house. The number one thing that kids ask me about when they want to learn how to draw is, how do I draw something realistically? Well, this is how you do it. The trick to making something look realistic is by getting the most values. A value scale, which is shown here, shows how something goes from dark black all the way across to white. If you can take your pencil and make each section different from black to white and all the grays in between, making sure that each section is completely changing by choosing how much pencil goes in each section, you transfer that into your shading. If you can get all of those different values into a circle or a sphere or a cylinder or whatever you're drawing, it's going to make that thing look even more realistic. Shading is comprised of all the different elements you see here. You have number one, a highlight. The highlight is the brightest area on your object. In between there are all the values of gray. That is the second part of shading. Third, you have the shadow. That is the darkest part of the object. Fourth, you have the cast shadow, which is the shadow created by the object. As long as you have all of these things that are indicated by one light source, that's how you make something look realistic. Pencil, an eraser, some colored pencils, and your brain. Begin your drawing by shading the side opposite the light source. If you look on the far right, you can see where my light is coming from. So I need to think about where the shadow is going to be. I begin shading the sphere by adding the shadow first, using a lot of pressure. And as I make my way across the sphere, I'm decreasing the amount of pressure until I get to the other side. I'm trying to get all the values from that value scale inside this one object. Now I need to create some separation between the object and what it is resting on, which is the box below it. So I'm creating a cast shadow. The cast shadow is a shadow that's created by the object, and it is completely devoid of all light. So I am making it the darkest value on the paper. Once I've made the shadow, and especially for a sphere, I am creating a shadow that is an oval that lays flat on the ground. When I make it dark, I am going to also take my pencil and shade and make it lighter around the shadow because some light is creeping around the outside of that sphere and softening that shadow. Glad you asked. So light comes over from this side, hits this cube over here, and so this side over here is going to get the most light. So that means the back side of this cube is going to get the least amount of light. Light has a hard time wrapping around these edges. So a cube will just be straight shading from edge to edge. On this side, I'm going to make it the darkest. That's just my shadow value. So I'm going to completely shade in this back end. Now I need to make the opposite side, which is getting closer to the light source, dark on one end and progressively getting lighter as it goes towards the light source. So this right side edge, I'm going to make darker. As it gets closer to the light source, it's going to get lighter. As the light is hitting the top of the box, I'm going to leave that one alone so that all three sides that I see are completely different. To finish it off, I'll add a cast shadow, which is a reflection of the object on the ground, and that's completely black. And that is how I finish up my cube. The only thing I do differently with color is that I start out with 3 different greens using colored pencil. I'm doing the same technique that I did with my regular pencil, but instead I'm layering all 3 of these colors together. I start by erasing all of my lines. Lines on the outside of an object are going to flatten them out. Though I don't want to create a cartoon looking version, I want to make it look real. I think about the light source first, where it's hitting the object, that's where the highlight's going to be. So opposite the highlight is where the shadow is going to be. That's where I make it the darkest. Then I move on to middle value, which are in the pencil grays, but in this case, I'm using a variety of light greens. Trying to go from one end of this cylinder to the other by going from something that's really dark all the way to white. Next, I take the second darkest color and I layer that over on top of the first color. Not completely just covering up everything that I just did, but the darker color going over the lighter color is going to mix with that and create a new color. That is going to make the cylinder look more dynamic, more realistic, because the light is changing from one side to the other. I finish up my cylinder with my third color. That is the darkest green. This is going to be my shadow. So as I am adding the shadow, I'm creating an effect so that the left side, which is the shadow side, is going to really stand out against the other values of the cylinder. way that I do this is just by going over that object repeatedly until it starts to look blended. Now I have 3 or 4 or 5 different color greens in that one cylinder. I finished the object by creating a cast shadow, and I'm using the dark green to do that so that it stands out against the light green. On this particular box, you'll see the shadow will hit the edge, but then as it goes over the edge, it would go straight down because that is a box. I'm going to use a fourth color, a darker green than the first green, to make that appear as if it's getting further away from that object. Maybe you don't have 3 greens that are the same. You can use warm colors or cool colors. I'm using yellow, orange, and red. And I begin by erasing all the dark lines first and think about the light source and work on the shadow first, starting with my yellow, using heavy pressure, and as I go across the object, I'm decreasing the pressure until I get to the other side. I'm going to also do that on the bottom of the cone until I have created that three-dimensional object using that color. Next, I'm going to use my second darkest color, which is the orange, layering that over the yellow, which is creating a yellow-orange. Now I have 3 colors, yellow, yellow-orange, and orange, on this one object. It's always better to add a little bit at a time than to go too dark too fast. And you'll notice that I am also curving my colored pencil as I'm shading instead of going straight across. That's also going to make it look more rounded and three-dimensional than going straight and making it flat. I'll finish out this object with my third color, which is the red. That's going to make everything pop out. That's my shadow. Now I'm adding a red-orange over on top of the yellow-orange and the yellow and the orange, so that I have a very dynamic variety of colors in this one object. Is this a skill that you are going to do one time and that's it, and you're going to learn how to do it? Absolutely not. It is going to take a lot of practice and a lot of error and trial and trying new things before you're going to actually start to see the results. So keep practicing, and you could have some beautiful drawings like the ones at the end of this video.